Hey, what's up everyone? This is day 4 of a serial killer every day for the month of October. And on day 4, I give you Ted Bundy. Also again, YouTube won't monetize my videos because of the content, so I need your help to share, like the video only if you like it. If you don't, let me know how I can make this better for you. And subscribe because only 2.2% of you are subscribed. Now with that all being said, here's Ted Bundy. Roll that intro. Ted Bundy is one of the most terrifying of all serial killers. Why? It's not simply because he was a sadist or a necrophile who confessed to the murders of more than 30 women and may conceivably have murdered at least as many as 100. It's also because, unlike most such monsters, he could actually pass as a regular guy. The good-looking young lawyer who lives down the street. Bundy was not a skid row slasher who operated at a safe distance from respectable people. He was a killer who spent time in ordinary places. The university campus, the mall, the park over the holiday weekend. Perhaps the most deadly aspect of Bundy was that he played ruthlessly on his apparent normality. Typically, a victim, always a young woman with long dark hair and a centered parting, would be walking back to her student dorm or outside in the park. She would be approached by a personable, tousled-haired young man with his arm on his chest. He would explain that he needed help lifting something into his car. The nice young woman would offer to help the nice young man, and she would follow him to his car. She would then disappear forever, or would be found in the woods with her body sexually assaulted, her head caved in by a furious assault of a blunt instrument. Ted Bundy was born Theodore Robert Cowell in November 1946 in Vermont. However, he enjoyed very little privilege typically credited to his generation. His mother, Lois Caldwell, had become pregnant by a serviceman who had disappeared before Ted was born. She and her baby lived with her strict parents in Philadelphia, and in an effort to avoid scandal, the family pretended that Ted was actually his grandparents' child, and that his mom was in fact his sister. When Ted was 4, his mother moved to Tacoma, Washington, and married a man called John Bundy. A year later, in 1951, Ted took his stepfather's name. Bundy was a bright child who consistently achieved good grades in school. However, he was not an easy mixer. He was bullied when he was younger, and later, while becoming more apparently gregarious. He also acquired a reputation for petty theft and lying. After high school, he attended a university in Washington. Around this time, he met a young, pretty woman called Stephanie Brooks, who had long dark hair, worn in a center parting. Stephanie was from a moneyed California family, and she and Ted Bundy went out together for a while. However, while Bundy became obsessed with her, she found him lacking in ambition, and when she left to college, she broke it off with him. Bundy was devastated. He left college and moped around for a while. Then he turned his disappointment into motivation to succeed. He re-enrolled in college, studied psychology, and became active in the Republican Party. He worked for a suicide hotline and received a commendation for the Seattle Police Department for catching a mugger. He found a new girlfriend, divorcee, Meg Anders. He could sincerely have looked more like a model citizen. Underneath, however, a murderous rage was building. First, he got back in touch with Stephanie Brooks, meeting up with her in California while on a business trip in 1973. She was impressed by the new go-ahead Ted, and unbeknownst to Anders, Stephanie and Ted began to talk about marriage. In February 1974, Bundy broke off all contacts with Brooks. Just as suddenly as she dumped him, he did the same to her. What she didn't know was that just beforehand, Bundy had committed his first murder. The victim was a young woman, Linda Healy, who he had abducted from her basement flat in Seattle. Over the next few months, 5 young women would vanish in the surrounding area. Each one was last seen out walking, and each had long, dark hair with a center parting. It was clear that there was a serial killer on the loose, but at this stage the police had no bodies and no clues. Then came the events of July 14th. On a hot summer's day, crowds flocked to the shores, but 2 of them, 23-year-old Janice Ott and 19-year-old Denise Nuslin had failed to take the journey back. Both had wandered off from their friends and vanished. When police investigated, several passers-by reported seeing Ott in conversation with a man whose arm was in a sling and was heard to say his name was Ted. Then another witness came forward and said that Ted had asked her to help secure a sailboat to his car, a tan Volkswagen Beetle. She had gone with him as far as his car, but when he told her that the boat was somewhere up the road and they would have to drive there, she had become suspicious and declined. The police put out a description for a man called Ted, and various calls came in. One of these was an anonymous call from Meg Anders, saying she thought that the man they might be looking for was boyfriend Ted Bundy, who was starting to alarm her with his interest in violent sex and bondage. The police checked out Bundy, but a young Republican law student seemed too innocent to worry about. Over the next 3 months, bodies started to be discovered. Ott and Nuslin were found buried in the wood, along with a skeleton of a third woman who could not be identified. 2 more bodies were found the following month. Then, Bundy moved his operations out of state. His next 3 victims were all abducted in Utah during the month of October. At this point, Bundy made his first mistake. On November 8th, he attempted to abduct Carol Duranch from a shopping mall in Salt Lake City. He pretended to be a police officer and lured her into his car, a Volkswagen Beetle. She became suspicious and managed to escape following a struggle. Later that night, 17-year-old Debbie Kent wasn't so lucky. In the new year, Bundy moved his hunting ground again, this time to Colorado. He abducted 4 more women there in the first half of 1975. Just before the 4th body was discovered, however, he was finally arrested. A policeman had stopped Bundy in Salt Lake City and looked inside his car, finding handcuffs and a stocking mask. Carol Duranch was called in to pick Bundy out of a lineup as the man who tried to abduct her. Her evidence was enough to have him convicted and sentenced to jail for attempted kidnapping. Meanwhile, other evidence linked Bundy to the killings in Colorado, and on January 1977, he was taken to Aspen for the murder of Karen Campbell. The game was clearly up for Bundy. However respectable his exterior, it was all too plain that underneath was an appalling sexual sadist and murderer. This should have been the end of the story, but waiting for trial, Bundy demonstrated new levels of resourcefulness. He escaped from custody during a court appearance and spent 8 days hiding in Aspen before being recaptured. Incredibly, he then managed to escape again, cutting a hole in the roof of his cell, crawling along and cutting another roof down into a janitor's room, then walking unchallenged out of prison. This escape would last longer and have worse consequences. Bundy fled to Tallahassee, Florida, where he rented a room under an assumed name close to the university. 2 weeks after his escape, on January 15th, 1978, he murdered again. Giving up all subtlety in his approach, he broke into a sorority and brutally sexually assaulted and murdered 2 young women, leaving a third badly injured. The following month, he failed in his attempt to abduct a schoolgirl. 3 days later, he succeeded in abducting and murdering his final victim, 12-year-old Kimberly Lynch. After another 3 days, he was finally recaptured, and this time he was convicted for first-degree murder. The evidence against him was that his teeth matched on a bite mark he left on a victim. In July 1979, he was sentenced to death by electric chair. Law student Ted Bundy launched several increasingly tenacious appeals and became a celebrity while in prison. He confessed to more than 30 murders. Women proposed marriage to him. One even succeeded in exchanging marriage vows with him when she appeared as a defense witness during his appeal in court. The courts were not impressed, however, and finally on January 24th, 1989, Ted Bundy was put to death by electric chair. That's all the time we have for today. I hope you liked the video, and don't forget to subscribe and comment who you think the next serial killer is going to be. You can follow me or reach out to me on Twitter, and I also have a Twitch channel that I play some games every now and then. Until next time, guys, sweet dreams.